Hello, welcome to Devotionables, brief devotions for busy people. My name is Craig Carmack. I'm part of IC6 BFG group here at 9th and O, and today we'll be studying in Acts 27. And Acts 27 is a recounting of Paul's trip to Italy. Not a trip that he took of his own accord, but Paul has been a prisoner in Israel for several chapters now in Acts for a couple years, and he's on his way to Rome to plead his case before the government there. And in this chapter, what we see is Paul's taken on a ship. He's taken through the Mediterranean Sea, and there's a lot of location names in this chapter that may kind of make the chapter a little bit difficult to follow sometimes, but if you just have a map beside you, you can see Paul's journey, and you can see every place that where he's going on his way between Caesarea and Italy. He kind of takes a journey up under the underside of modern-day Turkey and then goes down to an island in the Mediterranean Sea. And that's really where the significant part of this chapter is from that island. Instead of going straight up to their end place, they are taken out to sea, and they spend the next couple weeks unsure if they're even going to survive. What we see is there's a great storm. There's unable to see the sun for 14 days, not sure if they have enough food, and then they run aground and wreck their ship on an island just south of Italy, and then they make it there safely. However, what we notice in this chapter are two major things. One is God's grace to the nations, and the second is a Christian's faith in this good God. So in God's grace to the nations, we see that in two ways. If you see, first of all, in verse 22, Paul writes, he says to the people here who are on this ship, as they're uncertain as to what their future looks like, he says, "Yet now I urge you to take heart, for there will be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship." And we know Paul earlier, he warned them about this dangerous journey, and they did not listen, and they went anyway. And he even said there may be loss of life. There'll be loss of the ship. There'll be loss of life. Don't do this. And they didn't listen. And then they're out in the middle of the sea. And then we see God's grace, that these people who are rebelling against God's servant Paul, and yet God gives them a word of assurance that there will be no loss of life among them. And so they are saved physically. They make it to Italy. And then the second is God's blessing to the nations spiritually. We know that this journey wasn't just a random journey that Paul took, but we know this is a journey where in the next chapter, Paul preaches and he shares the gospel, and many people are saved. And we can often take heart to that God's apostles, including Paul, went out from Israel to share the gospel, not just among their own people, but among the nations, so that you and I can be blessed. And that's one of the reasons Paul isn't actually in prison. One of the reasons they threw him in prison was because he kept preaching this gospel that is to be bless the whole world and not just one people. And so we can see God's grace there to the nations. But the second major thing that we see in the chapter is a Christian's faith in this good and gracious God. So God is gracious. He spares lives. He saves souls. But also we see Paul in verse 25. He says, "So take heart," again, take heart in the midst of this shipwreck, in the midst of these storms where they're uncertain about the future. Paul writes, "For I have faith in God that it will be exactly as I have been told." That his vision is in a good God who keeps his word. He knows that God is going to be faithful. He knows that God is going to be true. That although he's a prisoner, although they're out in the middle of the sea and there's a storm upon them that is prevailing, and although they are running out of food, he says, "Take heart, for God will be true to his word, and he will bring us there safely." And so I would encourage us as we read this chapter and as we see the end of Acts to trust that as God was faithful to bring the gospel message to Italy and wherever Paul went, so God will continue to be faithful to spread that gospel message around your workplace and friends and family and wherever we are today, and that he'll be true to his word, and we can trust in that, whatever the circumstances of life, whatever storms may be around us. So may you see God as faithful today, and may you trust in his graciousness, not only to you, but also to those around you.